Hey everyone, it's Alex Miller at Capnion here. Happy Friday. I'm going to address a question I think is on a lot of people's minds out there, especially in the executive lounge. What does it cost? A lot of people are rightly looking at new AI projects because they're excited about all the legitimately really exciting technology that's been coming out. And the question is, well, we have XYZ goal. We'd like to build a widget for this or that use case. What is the cost really? And keep asking this question. I think it's a great question. And I'm going to give you some pre questions to lay on top of it because I think there are some things that get overlooked. So, to rewind a bit, it's becoming more and more important exactly what is it you want to accomplish. And it's not just about this or that use case. Some of the parameters about data privacy, vendor suitability, and then also quality control on output are becoming more and more problematic and more subtle. And I think it's really uncomfortable to say, and probably uncomfortable to hear, but a lot of these projects people are doing, if you set all the sliders on one end, we can run it anywhere, we can send data anywhere, we can use a sketchy API from a sketchy vendor, 10 different APIs. Data is just flying all over the web. What's really amazing, what you can make right now, that's really exciting pretty cheaply if you're not worried about an occasional weird hiccup. If you set the slider over here, all the data's got to stay in our data center. We need to be sure any kind of vendor we're buying is a really stable company that's going to last a long time, not going to do anything weird on us that hamstrings us competitively. And then also, we're using this for something where we really can't make mistakes. It really can't have a weird hallucination. Well, in that kind of scenario, I would say a lot of these projects people are considering become just, depending on how fussy you want to be, maybe infinitely expensive. So I really like to talk about retrieval augmented generation, something a lot of people are playing around with out there and talking about. Let's go into some minor details of how this can be true. So, retrieval augmented generation, I'm essentially going to store some information about documents that people might be curious about. I'm going to use this vector database to pull the right document, and hopefully it's the right thing, and then an LLM is going to read it and then give it to the end user. Okay, great. So here are my three criterion in this case. How can things go wrong? Well, first, what vector database am I using? Depending on what my current situation is in terms of infrastructure, I might not have great access to a suitable vector database. Something that's could come up in lots of examples I could give. You could use a remote service that would provide this functionality for you, but then you'd be sending data somewhere else. You'd be depending on that company. A lot of the companies are young companies of the sort that giant corporations don't really love doing business with. You're sending data everywhere now. Is that okay for the kind of data you have? With sensitive medical data, probably not. So that's rough. That's rough. On the performance side, I need to be confident that my vector database also is doing a good enough job picking the right document. If the level of documents is really huge, this just might not work and I might have to do something else. On to that in a minute. Maybe the documents, it's not a huge set of documents, but then I'm just not quite getting it right and I got to try different vector embeddings. I got to tinker with them. I got some parameters. And that's somebody's time and that costs money. And it could be a really quick fine tuning and it could be a boondoggle people have to tinker with a long time. So I like retrieval augmented generation is relatively simple and it avoids some of the stuff I'm about to talk about. But if retrieval augmented generation isn't working for you, now you're maybe in the lane where it would maybe make some sense if you got the budget and the will the buy-in to refine an existing model. So OpenAI will let you refine their models on your data. And typically, one major reason people do this is they have some data that they need to get the right answers on, and they want to refine the model to make sure when it gets that particular type of question, it gives a particular type of answer. Okay, so great. This is great. We're running into the same problems again, where we're sending data to OpenAI now. We have a kind of slippery task. Somebody or other is going to have to write the code and evaluate the results of refining this model. And, in a lot of ways, the same concerns we had before are still there. We've just moved on to a more powerful system of tools. Not everything is good about that. Okay, let's say I don't like sending this data. Everything has to be in my data center. I do need to refine the model, create my own model, but it's got to be all my own hardware. Okay, well, this stuff requires a lot of specialized hardware. Some parts more than others, depending on what you're doing. Maybe you can get around the issue, but the theme here is pretty reliable. That as you get fussier about vendors, as you get fussier about data privacy and infrastructure, where is this going to run, and then looking a little further back, performance, you gradually just pick up more and more complexity. In the end, you're looking at getting relatively new expensive hardware that's relatively difficult to buy. You're probably going to want access to some kind of expertise about what to do with it. And that's sort of before the project starts. And we've all been reading each other's postmortems on LinkedIn for a long time about more humble machine learning projects that didn't work out for various reasons. You see conversation about the cost of the specialized hardware coming down, and that's great. But that is something you get to deal with that's non-trivial, even before you get to really doing the essentially AI, essentially machine learning theoretic parts that could give you a lot of trouble by themselves. So to recap here, you want to know what it costs, and that's a great question. I think everybody should keep thinking about it if you have high-level responsibilities for these things. My advice to you is to take a step back and ask some gritty questions about what do we want to accomplish, and not just use case, but what are the data privacy parameters? What are the infrastructure parameters? What kind of performance do we need? What kind of forgiveness is there for weird behavior? Because for any given use case, the answer to these questions can sway the answer about actual cost in the end by quite a bit. And that's something to keep in mind. As usual, if you like this video, please engage with it in some way. I'd love to hear from you if you go to my profile. There's a book appointment link. If you need help, or you would love to talk about your own adventures, or you disagreed with the video and you want to give me a piece of my mind, I'd love to hear from you.